Footfighters must control space, defend mages, manage stamina, and win the game of parries and feints. Success is about mechanics and mindset. Today, we will be discussing what it takes to be a footfighter, otherwise known as a footy. I will suggest gameplay settings for a footy, talk about differences between meta footfighter classes, the expectations your guild will have for you, as well as the expectations for whatever clade you're playing as. A good footy can help a team succeed in winning against another group, but should also be able to beat or at least hold off one or more other footies alone. Before we discuss any fighting techniques, let's start out with our gameplay settings and keybinds. Max your FOV to see more around you. If you play on a more zoomed in FOV, it will be harder to see what whoever you're fighting is doing, especially if there's more than one attacker. Sensitivity. Lower sensitivity or high sensitivity, which is better? With higher sensitivity, it's easier to throw out spins and feint, but with lower sensitivity, you're less likely to create misinputs when you try to parry. One of the main challenges new footfighters face is misinputs, when your intention is to block in one direction, but you end up blocking another, or moving your entire screen. FPS. Try to squeeze as much FPS as you possibly can. This is meta. Maybe you enjoy the game more with better graphics settings, and that's understandable, but you'll likely benefit from more FPS because you can see animations in their entirety. Differences between using mouse, keybinds, or a hybrid of the two. Blocking with your mouse is typically the go-to. It's straightforward and doesn't take nearly as much effort as taking your fingers off of your movement keys to parry. Typically, for attacking keybinds, they're considered better. If possible, you should learn attack keybinds. You can set up different directional attacks without moving your screen, and typically using keybinds gives you more control when doing multiple feints. This is personal preference though. There are plenty of great players not using keybinds. What should you do for attack style? I personally use click to drag. Some say to use drag to click. I suggest taking the time to try both during a duel or something. Again, this is personal preference. Inverted attacks for accelerations. What is an acceleration? Much like other combat games, such as Chivalry and Mordhau, you're able to move your screen and increase the speed or decrease the distance that your weapon has to travel to hit your target. Inverting your attacks makes it easier to accelerate because you don't have to look away from your target to charge the attack and then look into them to release it. Again though, this is personal preference, and there are great players without these settings enabled. If you're using a spear or dagger, you may want to enable thrust as default attack to make it easier to charge weapons, which main attacks are stabs. If you do this, you will need to set up some sort of other keybinds though to attack from other directions. One overlooked setting is your in-game audio. When in a large fight, at some point you are likely going to have tons of magic blowing out your eardrums, and you may miss certain callouts, which could compromise you and the group, so do some audio testing and try to avoid this from ever happening. Have feint easily accessible. When a player loads into Mortal for their first time, their attacks look something like this. As they get more combat experience, they start to look like this, and eventually like this. The difference between all of these clips is the speed and variety of feints and morphs strung together. To become a better fighter, you need to get very comfy with the feint key, and if possible, I suggest binding it to a button on your mouse and not a key on your keyboard. In my opinion, you shouldn't need to take your fingers off the movement keys to feint. Setting up your hotbar. Head over to action bars in your key binding settings and decide which things belong where. For example, potions and clade buffs. Have them easily accessible. If you're an Augmir using pipes, you shouldn't have your pipes on a crazy keybind like Control 9. You want it to be quick and obvious. Try to find something convenient for you and stick with it to build muscle memory. On another note, some keybinds will not work when you are sprinting. For example, if I bind my potion to F and I'm sprinting away holding F, it may not work. For the most important keybinds, it's best to have an alternative slot with Shift so you can do whatever you need to while sprinting. Some notable keybinds to use would be Q, E, R, T, F, G, and numbers 1 through 5. And you could add Shift, Control, Alt to any of those. Now I want to talk about HUD and its size. You want your stats and your enemy's stats noticeable, especially if you have a large monitor. You don't want to be turning your head to see yours or somebody else's health. I prefer to have these front and center on my screen. Now that we have discussed keybinds and gameplay settings, let's talk about how to win fights as a foot fighter. You're either frontline or flank pressure. Your job isn't flashy kills, it's control. Shut down healers, peel for your backline, soak hits with gear, and survive long enough for your team to clean up. Let's talk about clades and classes, the different types and their roles and counters in a team fight. To start off, let's talk about Thursars. Thursars are the team's DPS units. Their job is to weaken the enemy frontline and punish any mistakes with big damage. Thursars are equipped with defensive and offensive buffs. They have the highest damage output of any footy, however, they are very weak to magic, making them a decent frontline fighter. Augmirs. Augmirs are the team's tanks. They can soak up damage and are typically built to be smaller and harder to hit with weapons or spells. They also have a clade that allows them to smoke a pipe for a health boost at the cost of Grey Bar, also making Augmirs a decent frontline fighter. Velas. This is your dex character. You aren't strong and you don't have good defenses, but you have speed. That's your advantage. You don't belong on the front line. Let your team advance and create a barrier. Slip through it and pressure the mages, diving in and out of the enemy backline to keep their mages from healing or pressuring your team with offensive magic. Humans. They say humans aren't the best at anything, but they are good at everything. Humans are typically strong psi fighters, meaning you can create them in a way to have good physical damage, but also to endure magic damage. There's another type of human build though people play, which is a paladin, also known as a hybrid. A human paladin or human hybrid can use magic to open up a fight, but switch to being a footy. They aren't good mages and they aren't good footies. They are a decent utility/versatility build, and not one I would recommend a beginner to play as. They rely heavily on gear crutching and consumables when compared to something like a Thursar or mage. Keep in mind, this game wasn't exactly created with solo play in mind. A competitive team that wants to win needs a variety of these builds. Someone to do DPS on the front line or peel mages, someone to tank damage, and someone to distract the mages. Playing as a footy isn't about landing one hit, it's about wearing them down. Stamina pressure, mental pressure, punishing overcommitments, keeping tempo. Positioning wins fights. Don't tunnel vision one player. Control angles. Keep eyes on the teamfight flow. Be where you're needed, not where you want to be. In a large team fight, stamina is your health bar. You lose stamina, you're dead. Even with full HP, every swing, jump, and parry drains it. Now that you have an idea on what settings to use, which clay do you think you'll do best at, let's discuss weapon types and then how you can improve or help another improve as a footy. All this and more in the next video. If you enjoyed the video or found it useful, please leave a like and share.